Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bharti and we are here at SUSECON in Nashville, Tennessee, and today we have with us Brent Schroeder. You're the CTO of Americas. You have been CTO for almost a year now, more than a year. And as you talk to customers, what have you learned? What has been your observation in terms of SUSE's presence in the market, or the way the whole market is changing? Emerging technologies are being embraced. So can you just give us, kind of your insight?
Certainly. It's been a real warm welcome by the customers. I've probably met between 200 and 300 customers in 1 year. So it's been very insightful from them. We probably are lacking a little bit in brand awareness, but that's really a big part of my role, right? Is to get out there and get the brand more well known. So I spend a lot of time at events that are not SUSE specific events, meeting with individuals that aren't currently SUSE customers to let them know what we've got and so forth. And the response that I get is, overwhelmingly positive. With our philosophy, the open source company goes over very strongly. And then the breadth of the portfolio with our software-defined infrastructure and the application delivery platform, I think is really fitting the bill. Now, I think what customers are looking for from us is to be that trusted advisor in open source. Customers are really embracing open source and like the philosophy of open source, but it still needs to address their needs, right? So if you're not solving their problems, or it's more complicated than other solutions, then it's not going to make it. And so a big part of their feedback is, help us embrace open source, help us understand it, understand the readiness, what's ready, what's not. And that's really a big part of SUSE's role, is to be that trusted advisor for our customers.
If you look today, open source has kind of become the de facto software development model to an extent that people don't even bother to say open source anymore because it's understood. But based on what I hear from you, do you think people still talk about open source and care about open source, or choose a solution based on the fact that it's open source?
Yeah, I think you're right in that it's become a de facto model for most of the industry and much of the infrastructure. And so in that respect, I don't see it being either a barrier or a positive. It comes back to, are we solving their problem?
Exactly. As long as it solves the problem, it doesn't matter whether it's open source. And it's value add if it is open source.
Actually, it's exactly that.
Because that also makes that there is no vendor lock-in. There is no, and they can also solve their problem themselves with open source if they want.
I routinely get asked for those places and some of those technologies that only have a proprietary solution today. I routinely get asked, do we have or can we come up with an open source solution to give them an alternative to the proprietary solutions that are out there.
Beyond that, since you are CTO of Americas and SUSE is a European German-based company, what have you seen the difference between the adoption of some of these, like whether it's cloud-native technologies in the US versus European markets?
I think for SUSE, we probably have a little broader adoption and earlier adoption in EMEA. A lot of that adoption is based on community, your peers, and getting growth going there. And SUSE, with our strength and history in EMEA, have a little broader coverage there. So I think we get our newer products get adopted quicker there. But still seeing very strong interest here. Right.
But I think it comes back to the point of, you said branding earlier. Because in Europe, it's
the brand awareness.
Yeah, it's there. So what is SUSE, especially in America, is doing for this brand awareness, for the marketing?
We're doing a lot of activities right now. And I spend a significant amount of my time with the marketing team, just discussing events and venues and strategies to reach out and meet with them. So, in the grassroots model is get a dinner organized for 16 CIOs and go out and have a conversation, which is very enlightening. It's not only an opportunity for me to tell the SUSE story, which we're absolutely doing,
Right.
but it's also an opportunity for me to listen again, right? And listening to the CIO level, CTO level. So I think it's just continuing to build our awareness, and actually also building the awareness up the organization. SUSE is great, and SUSECON, right? It's the IT operators, the infrastructure developers, the grassroots. But our awareness higher in the organization is not as rich.
Right.
And so that's also a objective of mine, is to drive awareness up. Actually, on Monday, I hosted the first CTO forum for a dozen of our customers, where I had their technology executives in, and we picked 2 hot emerging domain topics and discussed those for the afternoon, and then had dinner together and spent time with the keynote and analysts. So really building that awareness up the organization, and then they'll talk to their peers and get the networking going that way as well.
So just for the sake of discussion, what were those 2 hot discussions?
The 2 topics we talked about were the evolution of storage, particularly, that's one of the areas of heavily proprietary dominance today, and the emergence of software-defined storage and Ceph, and so we were talking to them about software-defined storage, and not just software-defined storage, but really more the storage trends. That was the goal of the day, was not to sell a product, but just to have a peer group discussion on technology and the trends and what we're seeing and what they're seeing and the challenges to adopt. So I think there's a great deal of interest in software-defined storage. There's still some awareness gap. In every one of our vendors uses more traditional storage.
Right.
But finding the opportunity to try and proof of concept the software-defined solutions, and then recognize the fit for it, and then being able to grow it from there.
Right.
So the other one was containers.
Containers. Yeah, we are sitting next to a
Here we are
container.
with our containers.
Yeah. So storage is often seen as, why do we care about storage? But if I may be wrong, but when I look at modern, applications or consumers, we are generating so much data.
Yes.
I mean, and it's a big challenge.
It is.
Yeah.
And not just the amount of data, the number of sources that it comes from.
That plus, I was also talking to somebody that we are generating massive amount of data. Some of that data has value, some of it doesn't have any value. So you have to, then the data that has value, how do you extract that value, business value? So it's not just bits and bytes that you're storing, what to store, and what value you can get out of what you're storing.
Right. No, that's the challenge that I see coming. Is how to manage that data, how to parse the data, determine what's useful data, what's not useful data, and the other part that I've picked up with some of these discussions, particularly with IoT growing, is it's another venue for malicious entry. Right. So I've got. Now, it's not just data that I'm generating internally in my CRM systems and my manufacturing systems, etc. I've got data coming from everywhere. Right. Millions of devices just feeding it in. How do I know that it's coming from a trusted source?
Trusted sources, exactly. Yeah. So it's going to be a lot of challenges, in this area. Plus, as we are moving towards the edge computing, edge devices, they are generating huge amount of data.
Yeah.
So how much data you should send versus you should process locally, So it's going to be really exciting,
It is.
Yeah. So if you look at storage itself, There are so many, exciting things that will be
Absolutely.
happening. You said there were two topics that, that were, one was about storage and second was about containers.
Yes.
We are sitting next to a container.
Yes.
But we have been hearing about containers for so long
Yes.
now. So what is new in this space that you thought that it was important to discuss?
So here, like I said, I've talked to hundreds of customers, right? And every customer I go to, whether it's one-on-one or in a large group setting, I poll, how many people have adopted, raise hands. My empirical data says about 5 to 8% have containers running in any form of production environment.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it doesn't matter what forum I go to. Now, a lot, if you say who wants to understand it more, who needs to understand it, a lot of hands go up, right? People want to do it. And right now, I think it's that the ecosystem is still incomplete. So we had containers, and that was, okay, great, I got a container platform for portability. And then Kubernetes comes along, and it's, okay, I've got manageability to manage the containers and the container cluster and the automation of the containers. But what people haven't finished putting in place is, and this came out yesterday across all of the technology leaders, was the operations side of the container ecosystem is nascent.
Right.
It's not there. What I'm used to in monitoring and my governance and security and all of this, there's no best practices. Many of the tools don't work. I've got to use different tools. It creates silos. And so a lot of the benefits that I would get from containers are all mitigated or even more than offset by those gaps.
Right.
And so we just had the great discussion of, well, what can SUSE do?
Right.
What can the community do to do that? So we took several action items from yesterday to go off and work on next. So it was good.
Right. When you look at container, one more thing that people, I don't know, it may not be relevant, is that security and compliance. Because in containers, you have no control over what is inside the container if you're just pulling something from the repository. And then the package that you are shipping may not comply because you did not package it. So there's a lot. So I think these are also new concerns. Yes, coming up. So yeah.
I was sitting with some at one of the dinners that I went to. I was sitting with some IT VPs from some major banks. And we got talking about containers, and they were like, not in my infrastructure.
Right. Yeah, there are, because these are concerns are not met. They were like a hype cycle, but there are some core, issues and challenges that people overlooked. So before we wrap this up, I don't know, I talked about this earlier or not, but what are your hobbies? What do you do in your free time?
My hobbies? Probably my top of mind hobby these days is fitness. I do a lot of fitness competitions and fitness work. So it's a day missed if I don't get my workout in during a day.
How do you keep up with that when you're traveling?
When you're traveling, you can figure out a workout in almost any hotel gym.
This is the best hobby because you can do it anywhere. You can just go up and down 20 times on the stairs itself here, and that's
at SUSECON. That is my exercise from one end to the other.
Yeah, you should spread the venue more so that you can go to 3 venues, or maybe one day it will grow as big as reInvent.
Yeah, we'll be
have to just
in Las Vegas in the Palazzo.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. Yeah, but then most people will be just gambling with open source. You don't want people to gamble with open source, but it'll be fun. So once again, thank you so much for talking to us today, and as usual, I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.